David Kim is going to speak this evening, and I want to mention about March 13th. So a month from now, we have a different speaker. I just want you to make note of this because it's not posted on our website yet, and you might be curious what's coming up next. We have Scott Hamblin, who's going to be speaking, and those of you who know about glassware, barware, coffee carafes, and things like that would know Scott Hamblin's name, but we're thrilled to have him. His talk is going to be Mid-Century Hostess Carafes, My Accidental Collection, and it's also part of our Unforgettable Dinnerware series. And basically, you'll have to wait till our news release about that to learn more about it. But so mark on your calendar, March 13th, same time, same station. And now I'd like to introduce Scott Hamlin, that's next month, David Kim, who I'm absolutely dying to hear this talk. I know I'm going to be hungry when he's done speaking. He's going to talk about process, collaboration, and pottery to create unique, bespoke dinnerware for some of the best chefs and restaurants in the country. And David Kim is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and moved to Chicago at a young age. He's got a unique blend of Eastern and Western pottery techniques in his work, and he received his BFA at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 2013. He studied in Korea under master potter Kwak Kyung Tae, and prior to starting DTK Ceramics, which is how you can Google him, DTK Ceramics, he trained in multiple techniques of ceramics, from tile making to small batch production pottery. His experiences working for his father, who's a chef and a restaurant owner, has allowed him to think of all the intricacies of plateware, not flatware, plateware from chef to consumer. And I think you'll see that in his work. All these experiences helped him to learn to create and design ceramics on a small batch, unique scale. So without further ado, I want to turn this over to David Kim, and can't wait to hear what you have to say and show us, David.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Margaret. Very excited to show this slide presentation. Here I go. All right. So that is me. I'm David T. Kim. I'm the founder, artist of DTK Ceramics, and I do focus on handmade production. I'm a handmade production ceramic studio. So for me, I guess I studied under School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I learned from under the professor, the mentors, the friends I made there. I learned how to think through a lot of the forms I make. And I did make a lot of sculptures and designed objects, and I brought all them together to create my wares that I'm making now. For me, I enjoyed the balance between production, pottery, design, and ceramic art. So I am a small batch production pottery studio. I like to utilize, or I would like to say that I fall in between these three categories: a production potter, a designer, and a ceramic artist. So I always try to bounce between these three things to influence the wares I create. So as a small batch production pottery studio, I like to utilize multiple methods and techniques to create unique functional wares. Like forming things on the wheel is probably the most efficient way for me to produce multiple objects, and it's very efficient because I can create certain shapes that are difficult for molds to reproduce, like certain molds that have like undercuts where you can't pull things out of the mold because of the shape. That small difference for me, it makes a huge difference in how the food is presented. You can like encapsulate the food a lot better when you have more control over the forms you make. I consider myself as a designer too, because I like to intuitively create objects that go beyond minimal form and function. I want to make wares that connect and create meaning to the ingredients that are used and the display of the plating and the overall dining experience of how people interact with the food and the space that they are in. And this all ties with me being under the umbrella of a ceramic artist. I'm passionate about using fire clay and glazes to explore the potential of the medium, as well as the infinite number of possibilities to create something new with a material that is as old as the earth. Um, I'm always fascinated how every design, glaze, or form, or a combination of those can branch off to new design, glazes, and forms. And this connection to the material and people is a bond that is humbly and quietly a part of our daily life. Um, so my studio revolves on these P words. My studio theme, it's process, practice, patience, and pain and passion. And this is very important because for process, it's I like to learn from the material that I work with. Material can teach me so much of what it likes to do or not like to do, like how it melts in certain kiln settings or how it doesn't melt. And I can utilize these properties and apply these to future projects or endeavors. Certain glazes or materials that don't work in the past that I use will could work in the future. And I like to keep the possibilities open. And when you learn how to utilize these processes, that's what um, it's part of the process of learning the material when you utilize it. Practice is essential for me because good things take time, and creating and designing new wares comes from past wares. Everything I make is an extension of my past projects, and studio practice with quotation, like drawing skills and handling skills, come from the work I put in to create pots. And through that, I am able to create my own vocabulary, language, and personality. And I want to have it's nice to have like a personal dictionary or encyclopedia to choose from the things I create. And patience is also very important because it's like a mental state for me for where I know that the studio process and studio practice takes time to grow. So I try to enjoy the journey. And with this all comes the pain and passion. Pottery, I'd like to say, is the art of failure and how to deal with the mishaps of the natural process of ceramics, but still keep moving and learn to see the failures as possibilities for the future. For my passion, it is a passion, this art. I like to keep going, and every object to me it's just really interesting that this lump of clay of earth and you mold it from the ground and comes from the earth, so you mold it and it ends up into various fine dining restaurants, people's homes, or sculptural objects. So my practice revolves around working with a lot of materials and or items that encapsulate ceramics. And so this is a POW project I did where I, for a restaurant, where I extruded clay tiles from my pug mill. I put a die in front of it, and the die basically extrudes rectangular tiles, and you just cut them to length. And this is me just drying them all up in the. I had multiple wire racks and just stacked them up between plaster or drywall boards to even the drying process. And this is a certain glaze test that I did for the tiles. So many shades of green and mint green or bluish, dark greens, and a picture of me loading or a picture of the kiln load of the tiles. And these are the tiles that have been installed. So it goes with these handmade tiles. They're extruded, but there's the hand is involved because the glaze application, and it creates multiple layers of the glaze. At first, I thought it was a failure because tiles are supposed to be all one color and uniform, but this aspect of playing with the glaze thickness and allowing the dark clay with the light thin thickness of the glaze allows these gradients in the color. And it actually creates a beautiful gradients in the wall. This next project that I did was for Kroger. The theme of the project was the double dinnerware set, and basically it was a post-pandemic project where it was between me, Kroger, and an ad agency, and they wanted to make the year double the fun because pandemic, everyone missed a year, so the next year they wanted to make double the fun. So basically, I made a whole dinnerware set, which included cups and saucers, bowls, plates, a soup tureen, turkey plate, and gravy pour. And it was a very sculptural yet functional project where I had to decal all the pieces. Everything was made one by one. And so each piece is basically two pieces put together. And this is what they use for their ads with the gravy pourer and the plates. And this was, for me, when I think about it, it's kind of like the balance between form and function, but the function is for the theme of the ad agency or the double the fun, but the function is also sacrifice, but it kind of works with the ad, what it needs to be. This is the plate that I made for them, and each plate had about 50 decal components, and I had to make about over 100 plates, times that by 2. And that's 200 plates for 100 plates, and make 200 plates for one set or one group. And then this is a process shot of the bonding section of the 2 plates. This next project I did was for my own Marriott hotel in Miami, where I created it's basically a column of stacked ceramic vessels, and it basically creates a screen wall. Each of these vessels rotates on its own, and it creates like a moving screen wall where it can open up or close and creates like a sculptural, I guess, landscape or wall in the hotel lobby. And these are just more of like detailed shots of it using the right clay and underglaze. So all of these projects is a collaboration with people or people that I've worked with, and it's such an interesting thing when you use this to collaborate with chefs. For me, it's when I collab, it helps the design process grow organically for me and for the people I work with. Sometimes so this is about my chef collaboration. So when the chefs and I collaborate, sometimes they'll have an idea in mind, but they also have some restrictions where they don't want things too thin or things that will last, or they have rules that I can follow or not follow. And this actually allows me to think more creatively of how to make function a priority without sacrificing aesthetics. But it also creates wares that are reusable for multiple dishes in a way that is economical for them. They want a plate that can be reused for new menu changes or new dishes. And it's interesting to see the chef's aesthetic with the spaces they work in. And that also leads to new ideas. And for me, I try to provide the chefs with as much clays and glazes that they can choose from, with forms that they can choose from. And they come to my studio to see what I have, and they like to mix match forms with colors. And on this table here is a small percentage of my glaze tests, and it goes from matte to texture to glossy to satin matte, dark greens, lights, translucents, and the imagination the possibilities are almost endless with collaborations. So this is one of the first dishes to a restaurant called Schwa. It's in Chicago. And we chose a glaze this is a satin matte glaze with nice little it feels like the food that is on the edge of on the plate with the little sauce in the middle. And it creates a little repetition of the food, the plate, and it creates a connection where the food is part of the painting, I'd say. Yep. And this is the space inside the restaurant where there's a graffiti artist named Wong Kim painted the walls with a nice gradients from ceiling to the ground, or ceiling to the wall by the chairs. It's light to dark, and there's a light bulb hanging. And we designed this starter course where there's a light bulb on the dish that emits a fragrance of food and gives campfire vibes. And then I create like a little dish to allude to the walls and the painting. In the next slide, it shows little cups, and it creates that connection to space, to food, to the engagement of the dishes. And this is another plate I made for them with a meat course. And through my sculptural background, in the past, I was able to create these next two dishes for them. It's sculptural, but still functional, but it's in between that boundary of food and presentation of food. And these are just basically a plate that I made, and I ripped up and broke it in the wet stage and put it back together to create a broken plate for their dessert. And it's also a boulder bowl next to it where there's a little hole in the inside. It's a hollow piece they put another fragrance in the inside of the bowl where the smoke rises and it comes out the hole. So it creates a whole experience of eating out of like a rock, and it does a great job of putting an interesting and fun experience to eating. This next dish is from Jung. This is more on the minimal side, but doing little things to forms to reference like more like mussels or shells and clams. So this is a mussel dish. And I like the simplicity, but it does one thing to the form to accentuate the dish that it is in. This next two dishes is a scallop dish and a wagyu dish, which is a beef dish. But these kind of dishes I play more with color and contrast, and there's contrast in the piece of the scallop and the egg, and then the color of the plate. And another dish is a hamachi dish. Very simple, but it's designed in a way so the broth can pull to the middle and not pour around on the dish and ruin the color. This dish is what I was going with restrictions, where you try to create plates that are a lot more thicker and durable, don't chip easily, but they can still like function for multiple dishes, I'd say. So this is like a very simple colored glaze with matte glaze with very thick rims, but this restaurant Sepia uses it for multiple courses, and they can reuse it throughout the year. So it's very economical dish. It's a beef short rib dish for Sepia. The next restaurant is an omakase restaurant called Mako. And this is a seafood heavy, fish and raw fish heavy restaurant. And they use a lot of blues and off whites and light blues, dark blue. And blues are very hard to achieve with ceramics or dinnerware because it makes the food unappetizing. But this restaurant, we create certain colors and surface textures that actually makes the food pop better, because the blue references the water, the ocean, like fish, and the raw and coldness of sushi that it works really well here. So I like to also play around with the form earlier with textures and the way food is presented, doing slight variations where it doesn't take too much away from the food or the plate. There's a nice balance, that push-pull. And then these are uh, fried croquette piece dish, and then a shrimp dish. It's very minimal on these ones, just function with a high priority on these. And then this is a sweet potato dessert dish, and then a eel dish, which this dish is really nice because for me, I really enjoyed the color and the way that the edges are presented. I guess it's the dish. I really pulled the edges so that um, it there's movement in it, and it's I'm teetering on that balance between functionality here, and it's very specific for this dish and this type of dish. But I like how the glaze is dark and has subtle hints of green and references like seaweed or seaweed being pulled from the ocean. In the restaurant, which is a sushi restaurant, it's all about fishes and that kind of uh, ingredients. With these dishes, I like to think about material and connections. And the materials that I work with all come from the earth. It's mine and goes through its own processes to get it to where I am now. I'm an urban, I say potter because you just order things through companies that provide these materials. But this is a natural process of the industrial world, and the like knowing the materials to and firing and testing them, I create a well-balanced vocabulary and palette. And the connections to material also works as connections, creates connections to life. I like to see myself as a bridge between, I guess, inorganic materials of the world to the organic processes of life, where ceramics is it's non-organic. You can't eat it or anything. It's bad. And then when we're working with chefs, they create ingredients that they're organic food ingredients, and it's basically this connection between material and between the inorganic and the organic is collaboration activates in the space and the experience during dining. This is for Kasama, one of my uh, restaurants, or not my restaurant, friends' restaurants. They have a Michelin. This is a mushroom dish that, the colors play well with the mushroom and the foam. It's very subtle, but it works as a whole dish. This one is a, a pedestal plate that I made that has a lava texture, and it feels like lava rock, and it's referencing that connection to the earth. And the piece is so organic, raw, I'd say. And but the food they use on it, there's an oyster, and then there's some lumpia, and then there at the top is a fish skin that's fried, which has the exact same, almost the exact same texture as the piece. So it creates this whole painting, I'd say, or sculptural painting of this collaboration. This is a wood ash bowl that I made. There's a piece of meat that's a wagyu. It's a very high quality beef that is grilled on charcoal. But the glaze that I chose to use for it is also it's made out of wood ash. So it's basically the ash of hardwoods melted in the kiln. And it creates this dialogue between the dish and the food that I use. This is another dish where it's a fish that is seared and grilled on one side with that black crispy top. But I matched the glaze of I call this the UFO plate because of the really long ring, to the same texture as the salmon skin, and then the little sauce in the middle to make the contrast of the two pieces, the fish and the plate, connect. And I call these like kind of like pedestal pieces where the you have an area of food and the food can just shine, and then you have all this space to work with glaze textures or glaze lines or clays, and how it shows. And this is the inside of the restaurant from the past tile project that I did. And they lined the walls with nice wood and makes it nice contrast inside the restaurant. This next restaurant is Esme, and um, this is another way that I'd like to connect food to the overall space and how it's presented. And this is we call this, me and Jenner, we call this the mother pearl dish. That's supposed to be referenced to pearl, and then they use it for a caviar dish, where in the black and the white really did a great job of contrasting each other. And this is them plating it, and a lot of them are different sizes, but that's not a big deal because the interior of the pieces are very similar. And this is another collab with an artist through Esme that we created. I made the plates and Raspy, this artist made the drawings, and they would serve desserts on it. A couple of meat dishes and sauce dishes where I made a functional form, but like warped the plates a little or the bowl a little just to make it more interesting with the contrast of the sauce being poured in. And this is this is a dish that is a pig cooked in clay, but I made the platter that is on, and this pig is usually cooked in coal, and so I made a giant platter to like reference that cooking, and they use this to present it and do a tableside opening of the pig. And then these pieces are for Indian, which is a French and Indian restaurant, and um, they like the cuisine uses a lot of colors, and so I create a lot of contrast between the ingredients they use and the way the pieces are formed. I made a lot of bowls for them because it has a lot of sauce, and it lets the ingredients not be interrupted with the sauce. All of these bowls, they pull down into the middle of the bowl in a certain way where it creates a nice circular palette. But yeah, these are rim plates and leaving the rims unglazed. And for me, I like to use throwing as a way to sketch ideas. Um, Ideas only exist in the imagination and doesn't really prove if it will work or not. So I like to use my techniques to quickly whip out sketches, I'd say, to make pieces. And then I would refine the form. Like I would change the diameters of certain plating areas so that the dish does not look too small or too big. Finding that right balance where the plate is helping the dish shine. And it could be from simple things to like changing the way the rim is set when throwing so that it levels after firing. I would put the rim of certain plates at a higher angle so they would naturally sag to the right height. And then, or changing the glaze from a matte or a gloss to a matte or a gloss. And then after I do this, I would then go into production after everything is refined and made or set. This is a restaurant called Duxelle. This is a crackle glaze that, a lot of people do not approve of it, but it is actually glaze cracks that happen on the surface because there's so much tension. But there's always that push and pull between functionality and non-function. This dish works really well because uh, it makes the glazed duck shine, where this is what he specialized in, and that does ducks, dry aged ducks. And then this is a dessert plate I made for Don, who is chef of Duxelle, and it's the dark green playing with contrast with all the colors really helps the dish shine, and using all these ingredients basically create a painting. This plate is probably one of the most, I guess, efficient canvases for chefs to work on because it's so flat and has a slight raised rim um, to highlight the art of the plating. And this is where when I chose a nice, I call this a snow glaze to connect with spring colors. The glaze texture actually gives a very nice, it kind of looks like spring is coming and snow is thawing. And this worked really well for their um, out of winter into spring summer menu. So I want to talk about like abstraction and contraction. Everything I do, there's always it's an in between of two ideas. So it's trying to balance like how much can I give to being abstract or how much can I give to be realistic. Um, so like it's always a push pull and everything is always different, you know. How real should an object look so it won't take away from the dish, and how bright should glazes be, or how dark should glazes be? And this is an example of that realism to abstracting. This is a razor clam dish at temporis. Basically, they used to use just like um, razor clams, like actual razor clams to serve the food on, and it would chip and it would break. And so I was tasked to make a razor clam ceramic piece where they can reuse and use multiple times throughout the year, you know, and definitely more durable. This is another dish I made for them where it's a folded bowl. Uh, this is a restaurant called Porto, and it's very for this it's very interesting to see how the pots and the space work together, where it's the pottery is being activated by the space or vice versa. And this is there's a lot of wood in the restaurant where they use live wood fire. And so we made a dish that was an actual log that is clay, not an actual log, but ceramic log folded to represent the logs they use and with a nice oak color. And these are some dishes that on the left side is a dessert dish they use, like an oval dish that goes well with the colors. And the log dish, when we designed this piece, they knew that it's very round, but all of the the food on the log is held in place by small sauces. So they figured out a way how to keep everything intact when it's moving around from the kitchen to the table. And these are another shots of the pieces I made for them. This is for a restaurant called George Trough, and just a very highly functional dish that I created for them with a unique off-white glaze. Um, the the dish I call it the UFO dish. It pulls sauces in the middle, and you can put food just in the middle to encapsulate everything together. And I guess when I'm working with chefs, I guess for me, attention to the details are always really important. And that can mean like the proportions of the dish, of the plate, of the piece and the color, how everything looks. And also like finding good white glazes or is always tricky because whites are so different from porcelain to stoneware. They can always look different, but they can also be activated with certain glazes. And so that brings me to Oreo, this restaurant where they use a lot of whites. And the restaurant has white tablecloth, but the pieces are all porcelain. And I'd like to see I see the pieces as like a pedestal or a blank canvas for each dish. And this restaurant did a great job in utilizing this idea where I let the raw clay show where it is not functioning. So in these two bowls, um, only up to the line of where the food is where it is glazed, and it kind of plays well with like the functionality and the form. Like the people who eat at the restaurant will only eat out of the places where it is where the food is, and it also activates the unglazed nature of the porcelain, which porcelain does a great job, and it looks great unglazed. And this is another image from Oreo where to show how food or designs evolve over time, and there's multifunctional properties of certain dishes. So this was one of the original caviar dishes I made for them, and the next images are the caviar in white glaze, on glaze on the outside, and then just glazed on the inside with food on the inside. And the next dish is that exact same dish flipped upside down, where they would this next dish is for or this next dish is for Oreo, and it's playing with the lines and circular in contrast with the meat and the food. It's another image at a restaurant called Moody Tongue. This is a great restaurant to work with, and also they do a lot of uh, event space to present their work. So I made a lot of stuff that is about 8 inches or smaller. And this is their caviar dish and their dessert dish being presented. Here is more images from Moody Tongue and me playing with texture and color. One is I call these the vortex bowls because they have such a huge rim and small area where everything can pull together. And then there's a I call white slip on the outside of a swirl pattern to tie everything together. And then the next one is like more of like a textured plate where I create a nice ripple in the rim. And then this is some places I made for our Bocadillo market, which is a sandwich shop, Spanish sandwich shop in the morning, and then a fine dining restaurant at night. And then they use those trays for bocadillos, which is the Spanish type of Spanish sandwich in the daytime, and then at nighttime they'll use it for like appetizers and for the dinner menus. And this is for a restaurant called Jinsei Moto, which is another sushi omakase restaurant, and they like to, I guess, these pedestal plates is a dark blue color, and it referenced the ocean again, and how it's they put their fish on there, and it's a great pedestal piece. Um, and let's see, and this is probably the my favorite dish. I'd like to end on this piece of paper or pot. Um, and this pot is from the Cleveland Art Museum, or Cleveland Museum of Art. And to me, it's one of the most magnificent things I saw last year. And it's like a simple cup, and it's got some cylindrical patterns and a nice handle, and a nice black gloss finish. And it looks very functional. But what was amazing to me was when it was made. And this black gloss mug was made in the late 400s to 300 BC. And it's such a humbling thing to see, and how timelessness of ceramics and the material and people's connection to it. And Clary Illian said this in her book. It is a wondrous thing that long after it has ceased to be necessary, people still want to make pots on the potter's wheel. And luckily for the people who want to make them, there are still people who want to use them. And I think of that black mug that I saw, and I connected to that quote because it's amazing. And with new technology and production methods of ceramic art, keep reinventing itself. And it's interesting, beautiful, because to me, it's like nothing is new, but still feels new, and that brings me joy. That feeling of that feeling and that excitement will never end for me. And there's a beautiful bond between makers and people who use these pots, and it's very human. And uh, we share our connections to the materials on this world and from all different experiences. And yeah, thank you. Just like the, yeah, thank you guys for listening. All right.
Great. And Margaret will be joining us in just a second with Bill to ask some of the questions.
Did everything sound okay? I don't know. I think it's a bit.
Everything went well. I'm just now realizing I didn't make them a host and their camera and microphone are blocked. So that's why they haven't come back yet. Let me fix that. So sorry about all these little hangups today.
Okay, no problem.
Well, I think we can talk, but we can't be seen. Unable to start video.
So
Go ahead and try that again.
Well, I know you can hear us. Anyway, we loved it. I am so hungry now. Your work is beautiful. We have examples in the museum's collection, but it's so much fun to actually see the food, the plating of the food, and all the different restaurants that you've collaborated with. It's just amazing, and your work is just beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
I guess our video is never going to start again, which might be fine, but it was wonderful. So thank you so much. And I think we have some questions, even if you can't see us. We're trying to start our video here, but I think maybe are we on or not?
we should be on video now.
Okay.
So we have a number of questions that have come in from the chat.
Okay.
And we have some comments also. One of the first comments was, love the double dinnerware set. Traditional, but has a wonderful twist. Did they request something unique like what you came up with, or was it your concept to sell them on?
So for this project, what happened was they came up to me with the idea of how they would like to their vision, I guess, or what they're thinking, and they had the idea, but I had the materials and the knowledge of how to bring it together. So I created a lot of the designs of the handle, the cups, the bowls, the plates, and the lids, and I designed every piece in a way where there's a nice, I guess, how the pieces look when they're put together. Like a lot of the bowls have curved rims or plates that have rims, so that it creates a nice silhouette of the form when they're put together. And then I worked with the ad agency that came up with the concept, and they designed the logo, and embedded in the decals is the Kroger brand, and kind of referencing like holiday Chinaware and stuff.
So I have a question, David, because you know that we have some of the double happiness holiday dishes in our collection. And do you know what they actually did with that campaign? Did they go forward with it? And
yeah, so it was on their, I think 2022 or 2021 was when they did commercials for it, or ad profile on their Instagram and their website. I guess they used it for their promotions for the holidays. And I made about 200 of those plates, or 100 of those plates, which is like 200 plates put together, which is 100 plates. But they sent them to influencers and different media people to show it off and stuff. But yeah, that's all I know. And I know that it went to you guys, but yeah.
So David, I have another question about that. Do you have an assistant or something? Those plates are heavy. I mean, you must have back problems from lifting one of those double. They weren't. What were the big?
Tureen.
Oh yeah, the tureen.
Oh, the tureen. Yeah,
Oh
it's
my God.
it was a big one.
It.
I threw it. I threw it a little bit thicker because I knew it was a bit more for their purposes and advertising purposes. So I wanted to make it a little bit easier to sculpt with and put together, and have less of a error margin, I guess. Lower my error margin.
Uh-huh. But you did have an assistant, or you didn't?
I didn't have assistant. It was a lot of.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, one of the questions we have is, do you make everything yourself, or do you have a team?
I do make everything myself. Currently, like I'll make my own molds, and I'll do all my throwing by myself, and I'll do all the recycling, and I guess that's where I get my connection to the material because I'm in it. So yeah.
And do you sell any of the shapes and designs you do for special restaurants? Do you sell any of those like on your website or anything like that?
So when I do batch orders with restaurants, I always make extras, and like the leftovers that survive, there's always loss in order, I guess, from natural firing processes, but the leftovers I'll.
So years ago, I worked in the restaurant China business back when there was one in the United States. And we had this brochure that had guidelines for ordering dishes from a restaurant. It would say if your restaurant is this size, you need to order 45 dozen of these and 120 dozen of these. So what sort of orders, how many pieces are in the orders that you do for restaurants?
So I guess all the restaurants I deal with, they're not huge restaurants. They're small restaurants that have like maybe in one scene they can have about 24 to 50 people. And so a lot of the orders are about total, it could range from like 25 pieces to 300 pieces, depending on the dish. And they're very careful. And, I work with the restaurants and the chefs and very closely that we have we have a respect for each other and each other's craft, that everyone that works there is trained to be careful. And I think I noticed that there's a lot more of like friendliness to dinnerware now, or dishware, especially if it's handmade from artists, and it's something that it's great now.
So that do they just throw them in the dishwasher, or do they treat them with respect and hand wash?
They like certain things that I wouldn't recommend putting on dishwasher, they would put it in another dishwasher. They'll hand wash it, and the more fragile pieces, they'll put like hand towels in between each one so it can prevent chipping or stacking when they're moving. So they're very careful, and yeah, so it's nice.
So when you work with a chef or restaurant, do they have specific dishes in mind for each plate, bowl you create? Or do they come up with the dish after you create the design?
So that goes both ways, I guess. I have so many different designs that I've made as well that sometimes I'll just come and choose a design that I make and then change certain proportions or change the glaze that is already on the dish, and I'll just make them a new sample with their idea in mind. And sometimes also they'll already have things they already visualize and what they want, and I would fabricate that for them and create this piece that they love.
So many of the dishes appear like they would not stack very well. Is that an issue with the restaurant, or because they're small?
I always explain to them about the functionality of how a restaurant performance, I guess, and stackability is a huge issue, right? And some people care, some people don't. Some people love that it's something that they would allow to, like, that function to get erased so that they can have the beauty of the pot with the uneven rim or some kind of fold, so that it's not functional in the stackability, but it's functional in the vision of how they see the piece on the dining table.
And on the dining table, would a restaurant have exclusively your dishes, or would they have dishes from you and other artists, or would they have some commercial?
I think it's a little bit of everything. They like to, some chefs like I work closely with, that they like everything coherent, and some chefs, they like a little bit of everything, like handmade, machine made, or other artists. And it just for me, I think that creates an interesting landscape when things are presented in that way, and they can connect all that food or dishes together with the food they make.
And how do you make connections with the restaurants?
For me, I did a lot of craft fairs, and it's basically also I would just go door to door and just show them samples I make. But craft fairs was always a great way for me to meet new people and show what I have, and that's how I met one of the first chefs I worked with was the Schwa restaurant, Michael Carlson. I met him at a craft fair.
So what are you working on right now? Do you have a restaurant you're working with for new designs?
Right now I'm working with a Korean American restaurant that's opening up in Chicago. It's called Perilla, and they're more of like a steakhouse that infuses Korean American identity with American steak, I guess. And then I'm also working with the Mitokaya, which is a Spanish Mexican restaurant in Chicago as well. And yeah, it's a couple.
I know an important question, David, is that now that we know each other, so when I come into Chicago, and you have an inn and all these restaurants, can you
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I think one last question, which I think might be far too complicated to answer. But what are the names of the restaurants and where are they located?
Oh yeah. They're all on the names of the restaurants that I worked with, all of them, or
are they all on your website? DTK?
Yeah, they're all on my website. Yeah.
Go to the website, people.
And are they concentrated in the Chicago area?
Mostly they're concentrated in Chicago because that's how I've met everyone. That's where I'm from, and I like to work person to person, and it brings that connection to the work that we make or together.
So you throughout your presentation, you talked about specific names of restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So in a few days, we'll have the video through the Ann Arbor District Library. So if the people watching are interested in finding these restaurants, they can go back and refer to the video and get the names there. And I guess also through your website.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, I think this is a good time to thank you very much for telling us all about your interaction, your collaborations, great celebrations with all these restaurants. And
Thank you.
I love your work. We're really happy to have you represented in our collection. And on behalf of everybody who's here with us this evening and all the future watchers, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Good night, everybody.